Hey, thanks for making it to Veterans Preference. We are glad you made it. We have some exciting stuff to go over today, really about driving more money in your pocket, getting yourself set up to take out the stress of a transition, and even if you've already transitioned from the military, what you can do to better your life with the different resources out there. The first thing that I wanted to talk about is hitting that thumbs up button. Haha, I got you. Hit that thumbs up button. Subscribe, share with a friend, all that good stuff. We truly appreciate it. And we got some new exciting things that we're going to be doing here in the future. So make sure you subscribe so you can see the new stuff that we push out here shortly. With that, we're going to jump into this right now. One of the best things you could do as a service member to ensure that you are set up for success and drive more money in your pocket during your transition is filing that benefits delivery at discharge claim. Without a doubt, that is it. Now, if you're a veteran and you're already out, stay on because we have some really important information on your veteran status and what you can do. So with that, for the transitioning service member to kind of swim upstream and go through this as the right process, why is benefits delivery discharge so important, Randy, to get that filed between that 3 to 6 month period? Why is it so important for a service member?
Well, theoretically, if everything aligns and the VA is able to do their piece and you're able to gather your records, what it means for the transitioning service member is all of those VA benefits, to include your disability compensation piece, if you're going to be receiving that, will be ready for you upon discharge. Now, let's go back in time when I left the Navy years back. This program wasn't available quite yet, and so there was quite a gap. I left the military. There was a process where I was gathering records. It took time. I got my claim in right around the time I discharged, but then there was 6, 7, 8, 9 months of lag there. So this program, BDD, it is fairly new. I'll find the date and post it down below on when it came to fruition, but it's a great program. So for those of you still in the uniform, head on over to the VA's website, check out BDD, and start working through the list of things that need to accomplish. So to answer Jason's question, it's so you have your VA benefits on day one when you get out of the military. Chris, I'll throw it down to you for your thoughts on why this is important.
Yeah, this is actually really helpful, guys, because, in my own experience, all I remember is I had a commander who was looking out for me because I was just ready to get the heck out. And I was just worried about going and getting all the check boxes I needed for my offboarding ETS checklist. And even in the beginning of the process, my commander had said, if you don't get a VA records review, they didn't have the BDD process. And if you don't get a VA records review, I'm not signing your discharge paperwork. So, and I'm like, come on, dude, really? I'm young, I'm healthy. I could eat glass. And it came in really, really handy and helpful later on when some of the things started popping up, and I already had some element of records to fall back on. So all of these things are really important, whether you think you need them today or not. Trust us. These are things that you should do. Now, I don't know how they incorporate this in offboarding these days, but most of these things are things that they're not going to stress enough on that you actually do. So you have to take ownership and have to get these things done.
I agree with you, Chris. That is absolutely true. And I believe, like you said, it's probably one of those situations where here's the information, here's a BDD, now you know about it. If you want to do it, do it. If you don't, that's fine. Nobody cares. So very important that people understand the true benefit. And Randy, you nailed it too. Being able to get your VA compensation money in your pocket somewhere right after you discharge, ideally within the first couple months. If you filed your claim 6 months prior to your discharge date, VA had a couple more months to work on it. That's kind of the ideal situation. Getting that money in your pocket will undoubtedly make your transition into civilian life more comfortable. Now, here's the thing. When you file a benefits delivery at discharge, your effective date for the VA disability compensation is the day after your discharge. That will become your effective date. Any subsequent back pay will be paid to that date. So even if the VA took an extra 3 months, 6 months, whatever it is, they're going to back pay you and you're going to get a balloon of money. So if you had to live on credit cards a little bit, but now that comes through with whatever, $10,000 of back pay, that's substantial and going to make it much easier for you with your transition. Look, money makes things, I get it. Money doesn't buy happiness, but it's a hell of a down payment, right? So what you need to understand is that doing it up front will help that process. Not only is having that VA disability compensation check going to be helpful every month, tax-free money. Also, you're going to have access into the VA healthcare world. So that makes it easy to go get seen for other conditions, and also takes the burden off of trying to find healthcare if you don't have a job, because you need to have healthcare, all of those things are very important. As far as healthcare is concerned, before I ask you the question, Randy, back to the benefits delivery at discharge, typically that's going to be your standard, I'm getting out of the military person. If you're going through the med board process, you can elect what's called IDES, the Integrated Disability Evaluation System, in which they will incorporate in your VA disability claim. It's important to note that not always are they going to get every single thing that you could actually be rated for into your claim and filed. They're typically focused on the things that are getting you out of the military. So you're going to have to file more claims. Can you file more claims? Can you file more than once? Yes. You could file 1,000 claims. You could take as many bites of the VA apple as you'd like. I highly suggest researching, understanding, watching videos on the things that you can claim, because everything can help you gain that percentage. Quick number, $4,100 per month approximately if you're at 100% with a spouse and a dependent child, or a parent or whatever, with 2 dependents. $4,100 a month, tax-free money in your pocket. That's huge. As far as the medical aspect and being integrated into the medical system, what kind of pros do you see? There's no real cons. What pros do you see, Randy, with being able to come out of the military? You've just lost all your coverage, right? And now you have the VA claim went through, you're enrolled in VA, you went to the VA Medical Center and you got enrolled. What pros do you see there?
Well, obviously there's the coverage piece, but for a lot of our viewers, it's going to be, you're going to be a younger person. You're going to have, a whole lot more runway ahead of you in life, and you're going to have less gray hair. What I see as a pro is getting this stuff documented now, why it's contemporaneous, why it's still in your head. Because as you age and you get older like me and you get some gray hair, the bumps and bruises that you got along the way in the military are going to become more pronounced. And, you might have hurt your wrist while you were doing some training, maybe hurt your elbow, whatever it may be. And that could develop into arthritis when you get into your 40s or 50s or 60s. But nothing about your claim is going to be more contemporaneous, more fresh in your mind than when you initially leave the military. Now, sure, you can go back years later and file a claim, a secondary claim, and we've talked about those in other videos. But, time has a way to kind of dull memories and make records harder to find. So to answer your question, Jason, I think the benefit may not be, hey, I'm leaving the military and I'm just going to run over to the VA and have all these things looked at right away. That may apply in some situations, but for most people, it's just getting it down on paper, getting access to that care later in life, which I think is most important. Now, I want to go back in time just a second here, because you mentioned something that's important, but there's a little nuance to it. So you mentioned BDD and, getting that done prior to leaving. And once you leave active duty, your claim is backdated to the day after you leave the military. So you've left the Department of Defense on Monday. On Tuesday, theoretically, you're part of the Department of Veterans Affairs, whatever it may be. Same thing with an intent to file, but this is later in life. So let's say you've been out of the military for 3, 4, 5, 6 years, and you've noticed that some of these issues that you experienced in the military are now bothering you, and you need them cared for. The intent to file is also backdated in a very similar way. So let's say you've got, some records you need to gather up. Maybe you need to get a buddy letter from XYZ base that you PCS'd from, 3 years ago or 5 years ago. Maybe it's whatever. Getting that intent to file done acts in a very similar manner. Now, everybody out in YouTubeville, they are two totally different things, but it does get you your pay back to a certain point in time. So that's my thoughts there, Jason, and Chris. I'll let you add any color that you might have.
Now, I just have a statement, which is, yes, Randy was in his contemporaneous way, 6-syllable way. It's like when I have 3 kids, and while I had the first kid and everybody's like, get it on video, write it down, write a journal. I'm like, how can I ever forget this stuff? This is my kid. And then now I get it all, even if I do remember it, which is seldom, I get it all mixed up. And so Randy's advice is apropos. Now, I do have a couple of questions because you guys are way more familiar about how some of these processes work and how to unlock some benefits. My first question is, and I'm going to point this to you, Jason. What are some of the additional, since this is really, we try to tie everything into career and transition and education, opportunities that can be unlocked through going through these different processes. And then the second question is, for folks like you guys who have not only jumped in and out of active duty, reserve, National Guard, switching branches and everything else, how does this even work when you have all of these different pieces? So could you shed a little bit of light on those areas, both Randy and Jason?
Sure. I'll jump in first, then I'll kick it over to Randy. So, all right. So there's a lot to unpack in that. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate it. So, with regard to what else is there from an employment kind of aspect by going through this process, one, I think that just adding another stream of income into your household helps you to make better decisions instead of being 100% reactionary. So I think that there is some weight just in the financial aspect. Now, granted, not everybody's going to be 100% out the gate. Not everybody lives in a sustainable area at lower incomes. Some places are super expensive. But if we're looking at the nation overall, any extra money in the pocket will help you to make better decisions instead of being reactionary. So I think that's one. Two is coming out of the military and somewhat quickly being designated as a disabled veteran will give you a little more weight in some jobs that you may be applying for with regard to veterans preference, right? So being a 30% rated veteran is going to be better off for you if you're applying for a government job. Typically, you'll have a different threshold that you fall into. It also opens up other aspects as far as other benefits are concerned with regard to education, and we'll touch on those in a minute. On the bouncing from branch hopping and active to reserve, there's a big difference between reserve time and active duty time veterans with regard to VA benefits. The best way that I can describe it is in a short way is VA benefits, especially with regard to disability compensation, which often opens up the doorway to others, is kind of it's a carte blanche thing when you're active duty. It's everything under the sun. The government owns you, and we've all made that funny joke to each other that the government owns you. You can't get a sunburn. You can't do anything, right? They own you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It's kind of true, and because of that, anything that goes on with you is pretty much something that you could look at if it's chronic in nature or has some sort of residual effects, can become a service-connected condition. For the reserve side, it's not the case. They only got you a few days a month. And so therefore, it's really hard on the disease aspect unless the disease was caused by something that you could prove happened during service. They're mostly looking at injuries. I twisted my knee during a run. We did a forest march down at annual training. I did this. I was at a school and I did that. Is basically what they're looking at. With that, I know I can talk forever. So I'm going to kick it to Randy. because Randy is actually still living that environment for, I think, another month or so. So Randy, go for it.
Yeah. So to the first part of your question, Chris, about education, you can name the whole list. So there's the GI Bill, there's VRNE. We've done a great episode on that. A lot of people don't know about Chapter 35. So this isn't necessarily something that's facing the veteran, but the veteran's dependents. And this is a benefit for folks that are 100% totally disabled. You can look it up and do a little more research. We won't do a full segment on it right now, but that's a pretty substantial benefit, north of $1,400 a month for your dependents while they're going through school. So to your question, Chris, once you leave the military and you get your paperwork done and it's done right for the VA, there is a ton of educational opportunity. Now, going back to the second part of your question, which was, what does this look like when you have, let's say active duty, and then you jump out and you go over to the Guard? There's a couple of nuances here, but it really doesn't need to look any different. The first and most important thing that a service member should be doing is keeping track of their medical records. In the Guard, you may be seeing folks out in town for certain reasons. If there's an injury during training, you need to do an LOD, make sure that that's in place. If you're an AGR, I was an AGR for years and years. So the system there, when you're on the active Guard side or active reserve side, really isn't all that different. But keeping track of all of your records and being able to bundle those up and getting them over to the VA when you're ready to submit your claim is what's most important. One thing we haven't talked about so far today, but is part and parcel to all of this, is the importance of working with a VSO, in my opinion, or some other qualified representative. The VSOs come in, different forms. You might be able to find one that's with VFW or, American Legion. In some cases, they're county employees, and the county is employing them to help veterans in that particular county. And you might need to try one or two. So, some you may jive with better, some you may not. But getting help from a VSO is really important. I would steer clear of some of these organizations where it's, hey, you need to pay us and then we'll, maybe improve your claim. VSOs are doing it because they care about veterans. They receive specialized training. They know how to kind of, write a claim in an appropriate way so it has maximum impact. And, so I really encourage everybody watching to just do a little Google search, find your local VSO or run down to your local American Legion or VFW chapter and just ask some questions because they can really help you out. So with that, I'll kick it back over to you, Jason, and let you take it from there.
Awesome. So the one thing I do want to just double down on is LOD. So for those that don't know, that's line of duty. It's essentially a form that is an acknowledgement from your reserve branch stating that X happened to you. And it's a nice piece of paper that acknowledges it, creating a nexus, which is what you need when you file your claim. You need to show the link between your condition and your time in service. That LOD provides that. So very important. If it's not on an LOD, ask for an LOD. It's the appropriate form for injuries. If not, then make sure you get something written down on some sort of official paperwork from your unit. Now, let's talk about VRNE, Veterans Readiness and Employment. Okay, if you are out of the military and you've already been out more than a year, well, I'm going to throw this in there real quick. If it's been less than a year and you file a claim for the first time, you missed the benefits, delivery, discharge, it's gone, and you file your claim within a year, you effectively have an intent to file already in place from your transition. They will still back pay you to the day after your discharge. Once you cross over that 1 year from discharge time period, then that goes away if you've never filed a claim. So then you absolutely should file an intent to file to preserve that effective date. So I just wanted to kind of double down on that too. There's plenty of information out there. This isn't that video, but just a gentle reminder. for folks on that. So with regard to VRNE, whether you did a benefits delivery or discharge and you have a rating now, or if you've already been out for a while, you filed a claim, you already have something in effect as far as ratings are concerned, or you're filing your first claim and you have your rating that's going to be coming. Once you're rated with the VA at a 10% or higher with a basically anything other than a dishonorable discharge, you should be able to apply. Okay, this is different. It's not a guarantee. You can apply for the benefit of VRNE, Veterans Readiness and Employment. Now, if they deny you, you can apply again or you can appeal it. I personally had to apply 3 times, and I went once, denied, went twice, denied, went the third time. They got tired of seeing me, and they approved it. So that's a whole other story in itself. But it's important to understand that if they deny you, go again. This is super important, VRNE. Even at these low ratings, 10%, especially if you just got out of the military, because you don't need to use your GI Bill, your post 9/11 GI Bill, if you utilize the Veterans Readiness and Employment. So keep that benefit in your back pocket, go through VRNE, and utilize that for your the bridge to the appropriate employment. Now, it's an employment program, right? They're going to help you get employment. If education is deemed to be the missing link to you gaining successful employment, and your disability that you have that's service connected is posing some sort of a roadblock, then they will grant you into this program. Here's the interesting thing. If you have post 9/11 GI Bill remaining, which you didn't use any of it in that example, they will pay you up to $3,251 per month while you're going through the program. That's a big dollar, especially if you have a decent percentage on the disability compensation aspect. So let's pretend for a second that you're getting a $2,000 a month for disability compensation, plus you're getting in a higher cost area a stipend for your VRNE of $32.51. Well, now all of a sudden that's $52.51 while you're getting education to bridge that gap to get you into the appropriate employment, all while saving your post 9/11 GI Bill for maybe a master's degree if they're putting you through a bachelor's, right? So super important way to structure this. If you utilize all of your GI Bill prior to going for VRNE, you will not get that up to $32.51 entitlement. Instead, you'll get, if you went to a full-time school with 2 dependents, you'd get $1,123. So you're losing effectively, potentially, up to, man, I sound like a mortgage broker, potentially somewhere around estimated, close to about a $2,100 difference. So it's big. So make sure you utilize VRNE prior to exhausting post 9/11. So that's a huge benefit that I want folks to be aware of. Randy, your thoughts on VRNE, and then we'll kick it to Chris.
Yeah, guys, if you haven't looked into this, do a little Google search. We won't do a full video on it right now, but remember there's 5 tracks to VRNE, and they're designed to kind of suit you with where you're at in life. Some of you may want to be an entrepreneur. There is a track for kind of starting a business. There's a track for people that need a little more assistance if they've really got a challenging disability. Name them all. I won't go through them all right now, but check it out. Note what Jason said. This is a stacked benefit. So you do have a housing stipend, and if you're already receiving some disability compensation from the Veterans Affairs Department, you've got 3 stacks going. The education piece being provided to you, the housing stipend piece, and then the disability compensation that you're getting from the VA. So that's really a nice benefit designed to help you get further along in life and achieve your goals. Is it going to last forever? Are they going to let you stay in VRNE forever? No. To Jason's point, it's an education program, but that should be what you want, right? The output should be getting you to a better spot, so you can kind of move forward in a non-military capacity after you've separated. So love the stacking of the benefits, and I'm going to throw one more out there, and I'm going to ask Chris's opinion on this here. But we often forget about the benefits that our states offer, and even at the county level. But I'm going to encourage you all watching this video to take a few minutes, whatever state you live in my case, it's the great state of Colorado, do a quick Google search and check and see what benefits are offered at the state level, because in some cases, there are substantial breaks on auto registration, property tax. There's some educational benefits. There's some job training benefits, some, head of the line privileges or further along in the line privileges for applying for state jobs. So the theme of my answer here is stacking benefits. Don't forget to add the state benefits. And even at the county and city level, there might be some odds and ends that you can really benefit from. So throw it down to Chris to get your take on this.
Yeah, and look, California has a veteran fee waiver program that all my dependents get access to, even with a 0% disability rating. So there's in some states, there might even have some county benefits or other types of grants or things that you could have access to. And then there's also for some employers also have some tuition benefits that are associated with advanced education, which just means more than what you have. If most of them will be around job-related skills, but some of them they don't care if it's job-related or not. It is if you advance in yourself and advance in your education, that's good for you. That's good for the company. So, and I think the key here is just you have to always be on the lookout for these things. And we're sitting with 30 plus years post-military in my situation as of next year, as of 2025. And I just sit there and I say thank you, Captain Milliron. All of you have Captain Millirons looking out for you, but thank you, Randy and Jason. I've learned more from these guys that make me feel better about being able to coach others, and hopefully one day my kids when they sign up for some element of service. And so this is really, really like good OG types of stuff that you hope you never have to necessarily leverage. But if you do, it's better to be wise and smart about it. It's better to be thinking about it ahead of time, just in case. And that's what Captain Miller taught me.
That's well said, Chris. And I think that the point here is that information's free. Seek it out and get that information and then make decisions, right? You'd much rather make decisions knowing what's available than having no clue and bumbling around. What we're trying to do here is eliminate the I wish I would have knowns, right? Let's talk about, I think, additional revenue streams is what I'm going to call it, right? When we talk about employment and we talk about finding a job that's better suited for you, more money in your pocket, that type of stuff, really what we're talking about is bettering your quality of life, I think. And you can better your quality of life by adding additional income streams, even if they're temporary income streams. So whether it's getting your forever income stream of disability compensation, or eliminating having to pay for insurance, which is also saving you money by utilizing the VA's medical services, or getting VRNE with that housing stipend as a temporary income stream, or as Randy had mentioned, Chapter 35. Chapter 35 is another temporary educational benefit, right, that will create an additional income stream. I'm going to give the dollar amount. It's $1,488 per month. Imagine a situation where many of us have children. Many of those children end up staying in the home after they graduate high school for a couple years. It's very expensive out there. And maybe they're trying to get a higher level of education so they can land a good job. Maybe they're working a part-time job. They're trying to wrap up some a bachelor's degree or what have you. So imagine if you were in that situation and you were able to Have your spouse do some school online, driving in $1,488 per month. Have your dependent child also bringing in $1,488 a month into the household, right? So this is household income. That means they're not asking you for, hey, dad or mom, can I borrow $100 to do this? No, you got $1,488. You go, right? So I'd love to hear your thoughts, Randy, on the Chapter 35 benefit. I know you already mentioned that it's not that well known. Hopefully we can help push out that information a little more. To you, Randy.
Yeah, I'm going to give a little anecdote here from, a friend of mine. So my kids are not quite at college yet. They're starting to work their way through high school and just before high school. But I have a good buddy, and his son is going into his senior year and is considering post-high school options. And so he's called me for some advice. His son had expressed some interest in the Air Force Academy. So I talked him through what I knew about that a little bit and some of the other service academies, some other options like ROTC that are out there. But the one thing that he mentioned and was it was surprising is how expensive school is now for young people going to college. Sure, there's some grants. You might be able to get a little bit of help with, some offsets against tuition. But if you're a civilian walking in off of the street writing a check, it is nothing like it was 25 or 30 years ago. Education has exceeded inflation year over year. Higher education, that is, in some cases by like an order of magnitude. It's really horrible. And he and I were kind of talking about some of the things that we're planning to do to fund our kids, educations. And he was just amazed at, I said, hey, out there in the VA world, here's some of the things that I'm going to explore. I don't know if they'll necessarily apply to me. We did talk about Chapter 35 a little bit. And he was like, man, if I could have an extra, I'll round it up to $1,500 a month to be able to help my son as he gets ready to go to college, that would be a game changer for my family, because we're going to be writing a huge check each month, and it's going to be really financially difficult. So I encourage you again to look at Chapter 35. It may not apply. You do have to hit that 100% threshold, and so that's not going to be for everybody. But there are other things like what Chris brought up, tuition waivers. A lot of these benefits get left on the table. Jason, you've done episodes, over at Veterans Info Tap on this. You put out some great information. I've watched them. If you haven't, check out his other channel. It's so important that we don't leave benefits on the table, and the numbers are staggering. You wonder why guys like us do shows, in our spare time to try to get the word out. It is because the amount of benefits that are left on the table is just, it's actually beyond staggering. It's almost heartbreaking. Education's a big piece of it. So, Chris, I've been rambling. Over to you, buddy.
That ain't rambling, dude. That you're speaking the truth, man. I got one that just graduated, one that's in, and they both have gone to great schools that are state schools in California that are reasonable compared to what most people are paying. And, they get you every which way from Sunday because, the tuition's not inexpensive. The books aren't inexpensive, even though they're all pretty much virtual now. The housing is through the roof. Food, as we all know, food has gotten ridiculously expensive. And then they hit you up with these, they're on the quarter system with these quarterly fees that pay for all the upgrades to the campus and all the things that most of them really don't use. So, and then on top of that, they play sports, and then we're playing club and intramural sports, and then there's fees for that. And then of course they join the ski club, and there's fees for that. So it is absolutely insane on how expensive college is these days. And any little bit that you've earned, you just can't do not throw it away. And the only reason why I figured out the fee waivers, because I had a friend of mine who I served with who had older kids, and one of his kids ended up going to San Jose State, and she was my babysitter for a little bit and told me about it. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. And then I tell everybody I can, and I have friends who they basically lost almost 60% of their hearing from either being in a tank or being in a hovercraft or in, and these are folks that were like me that said, the Army was great to me. And, I just am not going to pursue it until you realize that, no, this is all part of the package of what you served for. This is not taking advantage of anything. This is getting the services that you've earned by throwing the uniform on. Right. So please look into this stuff. And I know it's challenging, and I've learned new things every single day. And if I didn't connect up with these two guys, I'd still be in the dark on so many things. So take heed. It is not inexpensive.
Right. I'm going to double down on what Chris was saying because I think it's important. There are many people out there that go, you know what, this is what I signed up for. It's some of these little quirky things that I got going on with me, whatever, I knew what I was getting into, otherwise I wouldn't have joined, whatever, save it for somebody else. Wrong attitude. If you would have went to any other employer in the world and that employer said to you, hey, you put in a good solid 4 years with us, we're going to give you all these, we're going to give you free stock, right? And it's not even stock option. You don't even need to exercise. Like you're going to be fully vested in X dollars of stock. And then you did your 4 years and then you were leaving the company for another job and you said, no, I don't need that $2 million worth of stock. Don't worry about it. You can keep it. My pleasure. No, you wouldn't. So don't leave this on the table. Sure, it's not just a big sack of money, but effectively it is. Pay down in monthly payments, pay down in other benefits, pay down on medical expenses you may have had. So there's just so much there that, again, we can't leave on the table. And one of my favorite things is hearing people say, save it for somebody else. You are that somebody else. And if you don't use it, we're going to lose it. We need to continue to be utilizing the benefits that we earned. With the conversation twisting a little bit to dollars and of inflation, essentially the cost of things moving upward so much, we are coming close to the months that matter for the COLA adjustment, the cost of living adjustment, effectively the pay raise for the various benefits, including Social Security stuff. Now, VA doesn't administer their own COLA for disability compensation. They adopt the COLA figures from Social Security. Every year, Congress has to approve the VA to be able to mirror that cost of living adjustment from Social Security. That's happened several months ago, where it's going to happen again this year. It always does. Right now, the projection for COLA, although we're not in the months that matter yet, but it's a trend. The trend we're seeing has been upward since January, in which it was in the 1% projected range, to now here in May of 2024, utilizing last month numbers, because that's what was released here in May. So for April, is a 3.2% adjustment for disability compensation, Social Security, dependency indemnity compensation, and other things that are affected by that federal COLA, cost of living adjustment. So 3.2%, who knows where it's going to be? We utilize the third quarter of the calendar year. It's the fourth quarter of the fiscal year. So July, August, September are the actual numbers for CPIW that will be utilized in order to calculate the true COLA, which will be released mid-October. So there are adjustments to this driving up the amount to try to, although it doesn't, keep pace with inflation. So just another kind of important piece to throw out there. Again, we utilize CPIW. That's what what Social Security uses, and then VA mirrors it. There has been pieces of legislation introduced on both the House and the Senate regarding a change to utilize, instead of CPIW, to utilize the CPIE, which is the Consumer Price Index for elderly, because more elderly people are utilizing Social Security and their spending habits are different than the 20-year-old who's out buying a 72-inch screen TV. They instead are paying money on medical expenses and that type of stuff. So those probably aren't going to pass, but the idea is that there are ideas floating around to change how it's calculated to actually increase it. If we were to utilize, and I'm going to want your guys' thoughts on this, and I know you don't have all the data, but just the loose idea, if we were to utilize CPIE instead of CPIW and looked back over the last 20 years or so, it would have on average per year increased at about 0.25%. Now, much like compounded interest, the same applies, right? If you had 0.25% back 20 years ago higher, well, then your next 0.25% would be actually a little more than 0.25%, right? Because it's on a higher amount. So the line would arc upward a little quicker. What are your guys' thoughts on changing how COLA is calculated specifically for either VA compensation by itself or Social Security and VA? I'd love to hear your thoughts, Randy.
Well, I've never understood why they only take a snapshot of 3 months for some of these calculations. Some folks have argued, hey, this is advantageous for the recipient because, these are the money, the money months where people are out and about and there's a little bit more economic activity. I don't know if I buy that, especially in this weird post-COVID world that we're in. I have also never understood why, the VA, which is a fairly well-funded, cabinet level organization, has to rely on the Social Security Administration for some of this data. If Randy was king for a day, I would try to find or data mine and get information on what it's really costing veterans to live and how unique expenses that veterans face are fluctuating with inflation, and then try to give a little better hack at it than just, hey, I want to borrow, some metrics from Social Security Administration. Now I understand CPIW, CPIE, they're two different things and they're done for a reason. But for an organization as sophisticated as the VA, I've never understood why they couldn't come up with their own metric that really dials in and says, hey, this is what we think we need to true up to make your benefit the same this coming year due to inflation as it was this current year. And folks, theoretically, nobody's winning off of this. This is just to keep up with inflation. So I don't think that that's an unreasonable perspective. Chris, your thoughts?
Give me the E, baby. Let's go. Especially somebody that's not that far away from qualifying for Social Security. But look, it's these things are really hard because that there are some people who have given a lot more than others, and I would love to see them get more. But that's hard at scale. So I always default to assuming that if we're taking care of those folks, more is better, right? So, and then I default to kind of the same position as Randy, which is so much of this stuff doesn't seem like it makes sense because it's so much money that they couldn't. Why aren't they kind of thinking about it and they're looking at it specific to the veterans, which is obviously a different subset. Yes, we have young and old veterans, but it is a different subset because of what they did early in life. That it would be great to really understand that pool of veterans and dissect that a little bit better to make sure that they're taking care of the ones who need it the most. But I know that that's just kind of a pipe dream when you get up to the scale that the VA serves.
Totally. Here's an interesting thing I'm going to throw out to you guys. So we know that for VA compensation, disability compensation, dependency indemnity compensation, pension, pension is worked on the poverty level line, but for the compensation ones, we utilize the Social Security's determination of the COLA, the cost of living adjustment. However, the VA administers their own COLA for VRNE and for Chapter 35. And last year, it went into effect in October, and it was, I don't remember the number off the top of my head. It was 5 point something percent, where the actual COLA that was realized on the compensations were at 3.2. So kind of just a little interesting tidbit there. I'm not sure how long it's been in effect like that. I've never went back to try to figure it out. But I would love to see the VA be able to utilize its own capabilities to determine the COLA for disability compensation, dependency, indemnity compensation, so forth, because I could guarantee that it won't be less than what Social Security's is. So we could only probably win. With that, we'll go ahead and end it there. Thank you guys so much for watching. We appreciate you. Have a great one. And remember, if we don't take care of each other, something went wrong.